The massive crystalline observation vessel hung silently in Earth's orbit, its occupants staring down at the blue-green planet with a mixture of fascination and disbelief. Senior Engineer Park adjusted his sensory inputs and shook his head for the third time that cycle. "Impossible," he muttered, checking the readings again. According to every established principle of xenobiological development, nothing intelligent should have survived here, let alone thrived. His assistant, engineer, Kim, was equally baffled as she studied the planetary data streaming across her console. The gravity is crushing, atmospheric oxygen levels are dangerously high, and the temperature variations are extreme. By every standard, this is a Class 9 death world. The Galactic Confederation had discovered thousands of worlds teeming with life across the spiral arm, but Earth defied categorization. Most spacefaring civilizations evolved on gentle worlds with stable climates and minimal environmental threats. The harsh conditions of Earth should have prevented advanced intelligence from developing. Yet there they were, humans, not just surviving but launching primitive spacecraft despite their challenging environment. Their radio transmissions indicate they're attempting to establish a permanent base on their moon, Kim noted with wonder. Using technology that's practically ancient by our standards. Park ordered their ship to descend closer, activating the cloaking systems to prevent detection. Their mission was simple: assess Earth's technological development before determining if the planet was ready for formal contact. What they discovered left the entire engineering team speechless. In direct violation of protocol, Park decided they needed a closer look. The team deployed stealth observation drones to monitor various human engineering facilities around the planet. What they witnessed challenged everything they understood about technological progression. In a sprawling complex in a region humans called South Korea, engineers were building machines with tools that should have been inadequate for the task. They improvised constantly, using materials in ways the Confederation's optimization algorithms would never have calculated. "Look at this," Kim called out, broadcasting footage to the main screen. A human engineer was repairing a complex circuit board using something primitive called duct tape as a temporary solution until proper components arrived. "That shouldn't work," Park said, blinking his four eyes in rapid succession. "Our simulations would reject such a repair as having a 0% success probability." Yet work it did. Throughout their observation period, the team documented countless examples of humans solving complex problems with startlingly simple, often makeshift solutions that defied conventional engineering wisdom. In another facility, humans were developing space habitat modules by repurposing shipping containers, an approach so resource-efficient it bordered on artistic in its elegance. When one of their test modules developed a pressure leak, instead of scrapping the entire project as Confederation protocols would demand, the humans identified the problem, created a patch from materials never designed for that purpose, and continued testing within hours. "They don't follow any standardized problem-solving matrix," noted Junior Engineer Choi as he compiled their observations. "They just try things. Sometimes they fail spectacularly, but they learn from each failure instead of returning to established protocols." The most bewildering discovery came when they observed a human named Dr. Song working on primitive fusion technology. The Confederation had discovered fusion power after developing superconductors and quantum stabilization fields. The humans were attempting to achieve the same result using materials and methods that Park's team had calculated were thousands of years too primitive. Yet somehow, they were making progress. "It's not just technological," Kim observed during their third week of observation. "Their entire approach to problem-solving is different. They don't wait for ideal conditions or perfect tools. They use what they have and improvise when needed." Park found himself growing increasingly fascinated by these Deathworlders. In one memorable instance, they watched a team of human engineers rescue fellow workers trapped by a collapsed structure. Rather than waiting for proper excavation equipment, they used the principles of simple machines, levers, pulleys, and wedges, to create an impromptu lifting system from debris around them. "I think I understand now," Park said quietly as they prepared their preliminary report. "They evolved on a world that constantly tried to kill them. Their entire history is a series of existential threats: predators, climate extremes, natural disasters, and limited resources. Unlike species from gentle worlds, Kim continued his thought, they never had the luxury of waiting for perfect solutions. They had to create workable solutions immediately or perish. The implications were staggering. The Confederation's careful, methodical approach to engineering had produced remarkable technologies, but the human capacity for improvisation and unconventional thinking might represent an entirely different path of development, one born from survival pressure rather than comfort and abundance. As their observation period concluded, Park made an unprecedented decision. Instead of simply filing their report and moving on to the next assignment, he attached a recommendation. When the time came for contact, the Confederation should consider recruiting human engineers for projects where conventional approaches had failed. These Deathworlders have something we lost generations ago, he told his team as their ship broke orbit. The ability to make the impossible work with nothing but determination and creativity. I believe we have much to learn from them. His words would prove more prophetic than he could possibly imagine. The emergency alarms blared through the Confederation's Central Council chamber, their urgent tone cutting through the usual dignified silence. Engineer Park rushed into the crowded room, datapad clutched tightly in his four-fingered hand. The gathered representatives from 17 spacefaring civilizations fell silent as Supreme Counselor Nara raised a slender arm. Engineer Park, explain. The situation at Rigel, she commanded. Park connected his datapad to the central projection system. A holographic image of the Rigel system appeared, focusing on a massive artificial structure orbiting the system's primary star. The stellar stabilization platform is failing, Park said, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. 3 of the 7 primary field generators have suffered catastrophic failures in the last 12 hours. Murmurs of alarm rippled through the chamber. The Rigel stabilization platform was one of the Confederation's most crucial engineering achievements, a massive structure that prevented a dangerously unstable star from going supernova. Billions of lives on 12 inhabited worlds depended on its continued operation. How long until complete system failure? Counselor Nara asked. 28 days at current degradation rates, Park replied. But the system's failure is accelerating. We may have less time. And repair estimates? Park hesitated. Using standard protocols and available engineering teams, 4 to 6 months. The chamber erupted in panicked voices. 6 months was far too long. The Rigel system would be destroyed, along with its 12 worlds and 17 billion inhabitants. Silence. Counselor Nara's voice cut through the chaos. Engineer Park, what alternatives do we have? Park took a deep breath. What he was about to propose violated numerous protocols and would likely end his career. But billions of lives hung. In the balance, there might be one option, he said carefully. The humans. The chamber fell completely silent. First contact with Earth had occurred just 6 months earlier, and the integration of humans into the Confederation was proceeding slowly. Most council members still viewed humans as primitive, barely spacefaring curiosities from a death world. Explain, Nara demanded. I've been studying human engineering approaches since our first observation mission, Park said. They excel at improvising solutions under extreme time constraints and with limited resources. Their techniques are unorthodox by our standards, but remarkably effective in crisis situations. Engineer Kim stepped forward from behind Park. We've identified a human engineer named Dr. Lee, who specializes in emergency repairs of deep space habitats. Her team once restored life support to an orbital station using spare parts and tools that our algorithms would have deemed completely inadequate for the task. Counselor Tev, a massive representative from a high-gravity world, rumbled in dissent. You propose entrusting our most critical infrastructure to primitives who haven't even colonized their own star system? With respect, Counselor, Park replied, conventional thinking won't save Rigel. We need unconventional solutions. For 3 hours, the council debated. Many argued against trusting humans with such a critical task. Others pointed out that there were no other options. Conventional repairs simply couldn't be completed in time. Finally, Counselor Nara raised her hand for silence. Engineer Park, you have 24 hours to assemble this human team and transport them to Rigel. The Council cannot officially sanction this irregular action, but we will not impede you. Park understood the politics at play. If the humans failed, the Council could distance themselves from the decision. If they succeeded, well, that would change everything. 48 hours later, Dr. Lee and her team of 6 human engineers stepped off the transport onto the massive Rigel platform. Despite having been hastily briefed on Confederation technology during the journey, they looked utterly overwhelmed by the scale of the structure. "This is bigger than I expected," Dr. Lee said, gazing up at the towering power conduits that stretched overhead. Her voice remained calm, but her eyes widened at the alien engineering surrounding them. Engineer Park gestured toward the primary control center. "The platform is designed to stabilize a star on the verge of collapse. It's one of our most advanced creations. And now it's failing," Dr. Lee noted, studying the diagnostic readouts on her translator pad. "These power fluctuations shouldn't be happening. Something's wrong with your core distribution network." Park nodded. "That's our assessment as well. But replacing the network would take months we don't have." To his surprise, Dr. Lee smiled. "Who said anything about replacing it? Show me everything you've got: schematics, maintenance logs, material inventories. My team works best when we know what we're dealing with." Over the next few hours, the human engineers reviewed the platform's systems. Rather than following standard assessment protocols, they split up, physically inspecting different sections and asking questions that often seemed bizarre to the Confederation engineers. "Why are these coolant lines running parallel to power conduits?" asked one human engineer named Jin. "That's the most efficient configuration according to our design principles," replied Assistant Engineer Mina. Jin shook his head. "Efficient? Under normal conditions, maybe. But if one system fails, it takes the other with it. No redundancy." By the end of the first day, Dr. Lee called everyone together. "I think we can fix this," she announced. "But you're not going to like how we do it." Engineer Park felt a flutter of hope. "Tell us." "We need to bypass your entire distribution network and create a temporary one," Dr. Lee explained, sketching a rough diagram. "We'll use maintenance conduits, reroute non-essential systems, and basically create a patchwork solution that should hold until you can implement proper repairs." The Confederation engineers stared in horror. What she proposed violated every safety protocol in their manuals. The solution was messy, improvised, and looked nothing like the elegant engineering they prided themselves on. "That can't possibly work," Engineer Mina protested. "The power fluctuations we'll stabilize those too," Dr. Lee interrupted. "Look, I understand this isn't how you'd normally do things, but normal isn't an option right now. We have 26 days before this star goes supernova and kills billions. We don't have time for perfect." Park looked at the human team. 6 engineers from a death world standing confidently before the most advanced piece of technology in the Confederation. They should have been intimidated. Instead, they looked eager to begin. "What do you need from us?" Park asked quietly. Dr. Lee's eyes met his. "Trust us, and be ready to try things that might seem wrong to you. Sometimes the best solution isn't the prettiest one." As the Confederation engineers exchanged uncertain glances, Park realized they were about to witness either the greatest engineering achievement in recent history or the most spectacular failure. Either way, nothing would be the same after this. Confederation engineer Han had never seen anything like it. The observation deck of the Rigel stabilization platform offered a panoramic view of the massive structure, and what he witnessed made his scaled skin prickle with anxiety. Dr. Lee's human team had completely taken over the central maintenance bay, transforming the usually pristine facility into what looked like organized chaos. "What exactly are they doing?" Han asked, unable to hide the concern in his voice. Engineer Park stood beside him, equally transfixed by the scene below. "They call it rapid prototyping. Apparently, they're testing several different approaches simultaneously before committing to a final solution." Han shook his head in disbelief. "That's not how engineering works. You model, you simulate, you optimize, and then you build. This is madness. Below them, the human engineers had disassembled several non-critical systems and spread the components across the floor in seemingly random patterns. Dr. Lee moved between different workstations, occasionally stopping to help or offer suggestions, but otherwise allowing her team to work independently. I'm going down there, Han decided. Someone needs to maintain some semblance of protocol. The maintenance bay smelled of ozone and hot metal, unusual in a facility normally kept in pristine condition. As Han approached, he noticed one of the humans, an engineer named Sung, sitting, cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by parts from a tertiary power regulation system. "What are you doing with that equipment?" Han demanded. "Those are precision-calibrated components." Sung barely looked up. "I know. I'm recalibrating them to handle a different power load. We need to create a bypass for Section 12, and these regulators are perfect for it. But they're designed specifically for tertiary systems. They can't handle primary power loads." "Not as currently configured, no," Sung agreed, continuing to modify the components. "But with some adjustments to the intake mechanism and a different cooling approach, they'll work fine. Maybe not for years, but long enough for your people to implement permanent repairs." Han watched in horror as Sung effectively invalidated the warranty on equipment worth more than the annual budget of some planetary systems. "This goes against every engineering principle we teach." Sung finally looked up, a hint of a smile on his face. "With respect, your engineering principles evolved on worlds where mistakes didn't mean immediate death. Ours developed in environments where if something breaks and you don't have the right part, you either make something else work or you die." Across the bay, Dr. Lee and another human engineer were arguing over a collection of coolant pipes they had removed from a secondary life support system. "We can reroute these to cool the primary power conduits temporarily," Dr. Lee was saying, sketching a diagram on a portable screen. "The diameter is smaller than ideal, but if we increase the flow pressure, that's 3 times the maximum rated pressure for those pipes." The Confederation safety officer interrupted. "They'll rupture." Dr. Lee shook her head. "Not if we reinforce them with the outer shielding from those decommissioned communication cables. The material is designed to withstand radiation and micro-impacts. It can handle some extra pressure." Han moved closer to Engineer Park, who was watching the proceedings with a mixture of fascination and terror. "They're going to destroy the platform before the star even has a chance to go supernova," Han muttered. Park didn't seem convinced. "Maybe. Or maybe they're showing us something we've forgotten. Watch how they work. They're constantly adapting, testing, failing, and trying. Again, no simulation, just rapid iteration." The most shocking display came when one of the human engineers, Jin, encountered a stuck access panel that wouldn't respond to the electronic override. After trying several software approaches, he simply took out a metal tool and physically pried the panel open, damaging the locking mechanism in the process. Han nearly had a seizure. "That panel is designed to be accessed through proper channels. The security system will—" "The security system is partly what's failing," Jin replied calmly, already working on the components behind the panel. "Sometimes you have to break something small to fix something big." By the end of the first week, the maintenance bay had been transformed into something that would horrify any Confederation engineering instructor. Systems designed to be separate were now interconnected in ways never intended by their original designers. Power flowed through improvised conduits. Cooling systems had been rerouted in patterns that violated every standard in the manual, and, yet, remarkably, it was working. The platform's power fluctuations had stabilized, and 3 of the failing field generators were back online. Engineer Han joined Dr. Lee at the primary control console, where she was monitoring the power levels with intense concentration. "I don't understand how you can work like this," he admitted. "There's no overarching plan, no consistent methodology. You're just trying things." Dr. Lee took a moment before answering. "That's not entirely true. We do have a methodology, but it's different from yours. We call it fail fast, learn faster. Instead of spending months perfecting a solution that might not work in reality, we try simplified versions quickly, see where they break, and improve from there. But the risk is calculated," she finished for him. We're not being reckless, we're being pragmatic. Your engineers are brilliant at creating perfect systems with unlimited time and resources. Humans excel at creating good enough systems under impossible constraints. Across the room, an alarm suddenly blared. One of the improvised coolant lines had sprung a leak, spraying bluish liquid across several control panels. The Confederation engineers froze, uncertain how to respond to this unplanned failure. The human team reacted instantly. While 2 engineers rushed to contain the leak, others quickly protected sensitive equipment and rerouted the affected systems. Within minutes, they had isolated the problem and were already implementing a fix. "See that?" Dr. Lee said, nodding toward her team. "That's the real difference. Your people are paralyzed when things don't go according to plan because your plans are supposed to be perfect. My people expect things to go wrong and are ready to adapt when they do." Engineer Park, who had been observing silently, finally spoke. "This approach, it's born from your world, isn't it? From Earth?" Dr. Lee nodded. "When you evolve on a planet that's constantly trying to kill you, you learn to improvise or you don't survive. We call it working with what you've got. It's not always pretty, but it gets the job done." As Han watched the humans work, a realization slowly dawned on him. The Confederation's engineering principles were built on millennia of gradual advancement in controlled environments. Human engineering had evolved under pressure, with failure having immediate, often fatal consequences. Both approaches had value. But in this crisis, with billions of lives hanging in the balance and time running out, the human approach offered something the Confederation had never developed: the ability to create effective solutions from imperfect components under impossible deadlines. "I think," Han said slowly, "I might have something to learn here." Dr. Lee smiled. "Good, because we could use another pair of hands. Those coupling adapters won't reconfigure themselves." Against all his training and instincts, Engineer Han rolled up his sleeves and joined the organized chaos of the human engineering team. The warning klaxons shattered the tense quiet of the command center, their piercing wail causing even the normally composed Confederation engineers to flinch. Red emergency lights bathed everything in an ominous glow as status displays across the room flashed urgent warnings. "Solar flare detected," called out Technician Min, her voice barely audible above the alarms. "Magnitude beyond predicted parameters. Impact in 17 minutes. Engineer Park rushed to the main monitoring station, his 4-fingered hands flying over the control surfaces. The holographic display showed their worst nightmare unfolding: a massive eruption from the unstable Rigel star, sending a wall of superheated plasma directly toward the stabilization platform. "The timing couldn't be worse," Park muttered. The human team had been making remarkable progress over the past 11 days. Their unconventional repairs had brought 5 of the 7 field generators back online, and they were in the middle of the most delicate phase of the final repairs. "Doctor." Lee appeared at his side, her face illuminated by the pulsing red lights. Unlike the Confederation staff, she didn't appear panicked, just intensely focused. "How bad?" she asked simply. Park displayed the telemetry data. "The flare is nearly 3 times larger than anything we've recorded since the platform was constructed. Our shields are already compromised from the power redistribution we did for the repairs. Will they hold?" Park hesitated. "The outer shields, maybe. But we've had to reduce power to the inner protective fields to fuel the emergency repairs. If those fields fail..." He didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what would happen. The platform would be fried from the inside out, with all personnel still aboard. The station's commander, a tall, spindly being named Director June, stepped forward. His voice carried the weight of authority that came with 3 centuries of service. "This station must be evacuated immediately," he announced. "All personnel are ordered to proceed to emergency transport vessels. We have 15 minutes to clear the platform." The Confederation staff immediately began shutdown procedures, securing what systems they could before heading toward the evacuation points. It was standard protocol: protect lives first, accept the loss of the installation if necessary. But Dr. Lee didn't move. "Dr. Lee," Director June said sharply, "you and your team must evacuate now. If we leave, the repairs won't be completed." In time, she replied. All our work will be lost and so will this platform. And then the star goes supernova in less than 2 weeks. The safety protocols are clear, June insisted. No personnel may remain on station during a Category 5 solar event. Your protocols weren't written by people from a death world, Dr. Lee countered. She turned to her team. I'm staying to finish the primary connector sequence. It's our only chance to save the platform. I won't order any of you to stay, but I could use help. 2 of her engineers, Jin and Sung, stepped forward without hesitation. Count us in, Jin said. 3 sets of hands are better than 1. Director June looked appalled. This is madness. You cannot possibly complete the repairs and establish adequate protection in 15 minutes. Dr. Lee was already moving toward the main engineering bay. Watch us, she called over her shoulder. Engineer Park found himself torn between protocol and possibility. Every instinct from his centuries of training told him to evacuate. But these humans had repeatedly accomplished what his people deemed impossible. Director, he said. Request permission to remain and assist. Denied, June replied immediately. You are ordered to evacuate, Engineer Park. Park hesitated only briefly before making his decision. Then I must respectfully disobey. That order, Director. He hurried after Dr. Lee and her team, ignoring the shocked expressions of his colleagues. By the time he reached the engineering bay, the humans were already in frantic motion. 9 minutes until impact, the automated system announced calmly. Doctor, Lee barely looked up as Park entered. If you're staying, grab those emergency radiation shields from storage compartment E7. We'll need to create a makeshift barrier around the primary control nexus. Park moved without question, retrieving. The portable shield generators normally used for emergency repairs in high radiation environments. These aren't designed to withstand a solar flare, he pointed out. They're not, Lee agreed. But if we link them together and reconfigure their output frequency, they might buy us enough time to complete the connections. Jin was already elbow deep, in the central control array, manually linking the new power couplings they'd fabricated. Sung worked nearby, rerouting emergency power to strengthen the platform's inner shields. 7 minutes until impact. We need more power for these shield generators, Park said, examining the portable units. They're only at 30% capacity. Dr. Lee glanced around the bay, her eyes landing on a maintenance exosuit hanging on the far wall. The suit. It has an independent power cell. Park retrieved the suit and together they extracted its compact but powerful battery. It wasn't designed to connect to the shield generators, but that hadn't stopped the humans before. 5 minutes until impact. Jin emerged from beneath the control array, his face streaked with sweat and mechanical fluid. Primary connections are complete. We just need to initiate the sequence, but the startup will take at least 4 minutes. We don't have 4 minutes, Sung said, still working frantically on the shield systems. Dr. Lee studied the situation for barely a second before making her decision. We'll have to do it simultaneously. Start the sequence now and we'll get the shields online before the flare hits. It's going to be close. As Jin began the startup sequence, Park and Dr. Lee finished jury-rigging the portable shields, creating a protective bubble around the critical systems needed for the repair. Sung connected the exosuit battery and the shields hummed to life, casting a bluish glow around the work area. 3 minutes until impact. It's not going to be enough, Park said, studying the power readings. The shields will fail before the sequence completes. Dr. Lee stared at the equipment around them, then at the nearby emergency station. Without hesitation, she ran to it and began pulling out every piece of radiation protection gear it contained. Suits, personal shields, even medical radiation barriers. Layer everything, she ordered. Put the portable shields on the outside, then the personal shields, then the medical barriers closest to the equipment. They worked with desperate speed, creating a patchwork cocoon of protective layers around the critical systems. 1 minute until impact. The platform began to tremble as the outer shields took the first effects of the approaching solar storm. Lights flickered and non-essential systems automatically shut down to preserve power. Sequence is at 60%, Jin reported, watching the progress indicators with intense concentration. Shields are as ready as they'll get, Sung added. Doctor, Lee nodded. Now we wait. And hope. 30 seconds until impact. Park found himself standing shoulder to shoulder with the humans as they stared at the progress indicator, willing it to move faster. In all his years of engineering work, he had never deliberately violated safety protocol, never placed himself in such danger. Yet somehow, it felt right to be here with these remarkable Deathworlders who refused to accept defeat. Impact imminent. The platform lurched violently as the full force of the solar flare struck the outer shields. The lights went out completely, plunging them into darkness broken only by the glow of emergency indicators and their makeshift shield barrier. Sequence at 85%. Jin called out, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. The makeshift shield began to flicker, its edges dissolving as the radiation penetrated their defenses. Temperature in the bay rose rapidly as systems overheated. It's going to be close, Dr. Lee said, her face illuminated by the failing shield. Sequence at 95%, Jin reported. A section of ceiling collapsed nearby, sending sparks flying across the bay. One of the portable shield generators exploded in a shower of components, weakening their protective bubble further. 98%. Park closed his eyes, certain they had failed. The heat was becoming unbearable. The radiation alarms, screaming warnings about lethal exposure levels. Sequence complete, Jin shouted. Field generators responding. Through the viewing port, Park saw the impossible. The platform's main field generators pulsing to life, creating a massive energy barrier that pushed back against the solar flare. The emergency lights flickered, then steadied, and finally, the main systems began to reboot. They had succeeded. With nothing but emergency equipment, basic physics knowledge, and sheer determination, they had accomplished what every protocol said was impossible. As the all-clear signals finally sounded, Dr. Lee sank to the floor, exhaustion finally showing on her face. She looked up at Park with a tired smile. So, she said, do we still need to evacuate? The grand auditorium of the Confederation Science Academy had never been so full. Engineers, scientists, and dignitaries from 17 spacefaring civilizations packed the tiered seating, their murmured conversations creating a constant background hum. At the center of it all stood Engineer Park, his formal attire gleaming under the bright lights as he prepared to present his findings. 6 months had passed since the crisis at Rigel. The platform not only survived, but continued to function with the human-designed modifications still in place. What had begun as an emergency solution had proven surprisingly durable, challenging thousands of years of established engineering doctrine. Never in my 3 centuries of service, began Supreme Counselor Nara from the speaker's podium, have I witnessed such a profound challenge to our understanding of technological problem-solving. Engineer Park's paper, Deathworld Innovation, the Advantage of Evolutionary Pressure on Problem-Solving Methodologies, has already become the most downloaded research document in Confederation history. Park felt a flutter of nervous energy as he took his place at the podium. In the front row sat Dr. Lee and her team, looking somewhat uncomfortable in the formal setting but proudly representing Earth. Distinguished colleagues, Park began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space. We have always prided ourselves on the elegance and perfection of our engineering. Our designs are meticulous, our simulations exhaustive, our implementations flawless. And yet, when faced with an unprecedented crisis at Rigel, all our elegant methodologies failed us. He activated the holographic display, showing images of the human engineers' improvised repairs on the platform. What you see here would fail every engineering assessment in our curriculum. The solutions are inelegant, imperfect, and in many cases, directly contradictory to our established best practices. They break rules we have followed for millennia. A murmur rippled through the audience. Many of the older engineers looked distinctly uncomfortable. And yet, Park continued, his voice growing stronger, they worked. Not only did they work, but they saved billions of lives and preserved one of our most critical installations. How is this possible? He showed a split-screen comparison. On one side, the Confederation's standard approach to stellar stabilization technology, beautiful, symmetrical, perfect in every way. On the other, the human modifications, messy, asymmetrical, with components repurposed in ways never intended by their designers. The answer lies in the fundamental difference between our evolutionary paths. Most spacefaring species in the Confederation evolved on gentle worlds with stable environments. Resources were plentiful, threats were minimal, and time was abundant. Our engineering philosophy reflects this. We prioritize perfection over speed, elegance over improvisation, theory over pragmatism. Park gestured toward Dr. Lee and her team. Humans evolved on what we classify as a death world, a planet with extreme gravity, volatile weather, dangerous predators, and constant environmental threats. Their entire existence has been shaped by the need to solve problems quickly with limited resources. They don't have the luxury of waiting for the perfect solution when a good enough solution means survival. He displayed brain scans taken during problem-solving exercises comparing Confederation engineers with humans. Notice the difference in neural pathway activation. Our engineers follow established patterns, methodically working through known solutions. Humans show more chaotic patterns, making unexpected connections between seemingly unrelated concepts. They call this thinking outside the box, a reference to puzzle-solving techniques that ignore presumed limitations. The display shifted to show footage from the Rigel crisis, specifically the moment when Dr. Lee had repurposed radiation gear to create the layered shield that protected their repairs during the solar flare. This is what I've come to call the kludge advantage, Park explained. A kludge is a human term for an inelegant but effective solution. Our engineering philosophy has no equivalent concept because we've never valued such approaches. Yet in crisis situations, the ability to create effective kludges can mean the difference between success and catastrophic failure. Engineer Han, who had remained on the platform during the crisis, stepped forward to join Park at the podium. I was a skeptic, Han admitted to the audience. I believed our methods were superior in all circumstances. The Rigel experience changed my perspective fundamentally. What looks like chaos is actually a different kind of order, one born from adaptation rather than theory. The audience remained silent, processing this challenge to thousands of years of established thinking. Park could see the resistance in many faces, particularly among the older engineers, but there was curiosity too, especially from the younger generation. The Confederation Council has approved my proposal, Park announced. We are establishing a new division within our engineering corps, the Adaptive Solutions Division. It will be staffed by both human engineers and volunteers from all Confederation species, with the goal of developing hybrid methodologies that combine our strengths. He turned to Dr. Lee. Dr. Lee has agreed to serve as co-director of this initiative. She will be the first human to hold such a senior position within our technical hierarchy. The announcement triggered a mix of reactions. Polite applause mingled with murmurs of concern. Park had expected this. Change never came easily to a civilization as old as the Confederation. For those who doubt the value of this initiative, I invite you to visit the Practical Applications Laboratory after this presentation. Dr. Lee will be conducting a demonstration that I believe will challenge your perspectives. 2 hours later, the laboratory was crowded with curious engineers. At the center of the room, Dr. Lee stood before a table covered with an assortment of everyday items, tools, container, pieces of wire, and various electronic components. Welcome to what humans call a MacGyver challenge, she said with a smile. Named after a fictional problem solver from our entertainment media who could create solutions from ordinary objects. She gestured to the items on the table. None of these components were designed to work together. According to Confederation engineering principles, it should be impossible to create anything functional from this random assortment. Your challenge is to create a working communication device in 30 minutes. The Confederation engineers stared at the pile of mismatched items with expressions ranging from confusion to disdain. A few began tentatively sorting through the components, trying to find compatible pieces, while others simply stood back, declaring the task impossible. Dr. Lee worked quietly alongside them, her hands moving with practiced confidence. In 28 minutes, she had assembled a crude but functional short-range communicator from the disparate parts. This isn't about proving humans are better engineers, she explained as the device successfully transmitted a test message across the room. It's about showing that different approaches have different strengths. Your methods create perfect, long-lasting solutions given sufficient time and resources. Our methods create functional solutions when time and resources are limited. An older engineer named Professor Yun, who had been watching with increasing interest, finally approached the table. "Could you teach this method?" he asked quietly. "I already am," Dr. Lee replied with a smile. She gestured toward a side room where a group of mixed species, young engineers from throughout the Confederation, were gathered around Jin and Sung, learning to create improvised solutions from limited components. As Park watched from the doorway, he felt a profound sense of satisfaction. The path forward wouldn't be easy. Thousands of years of tradition wouldn't change overnight. But the first step had been taken. In the center of the room, a young Confederation engineer held up a functioning device she had created from mismatched parts, her face glowing with pride as Dr. Lee nodded approval. "Remember," Dr. Lee was saying to her students, "elegant solutions are wonderful when you have the luxury of time. But sometimes the best solution isn't the prettiest one. It's the one that works when you need it most." Park smiled. The Deathworlders had much to teach them after all.